Today we're going to be talking about everything related to Google local services ads for fencing and decking. So we're going to be talking about kind of what they are. We're going to be going through how they work, best practices, all kinds of stuff for all kinds, basically all the ins and outs to see if they're a good fit for your business and, kind of how they work and how you can maintain them to get good results and good leads for your business. So it's a lot of stuff we're going to be covering, but this is kind of a snapshot or an overview, I guess. So we're going to be talking about what they are exactly, if you're not familiar, where they're active, and how they exactly they work, how you can get started, and then how you can actually get to the top two results, since there's only two results that are there, and then really just how you can take advantage of them overall. If you're wondering who I am, if you've never met before, thanks for coming on the webinar. Name is Alex Danner, and I'm the founder and owner of Fence and Deck Marketers, which is a digital marketing agency that works exclusively with fencing and decking businesses. I've been doing SEO, digital marketing for a long time, and website development for a long time, and really founded this company just based off of wanting to work with a specific niche, and had some success with fencing and decking and really enjoyed it, and do a lot of fence work as well myself. And just to know how much work it is to be in these industries and have a lot of respect for them. So it's been a lot of fun since we started. And, that's basically all we do here at Fence and Deck Marketers. And we are part of the AFA, NADRA, and we also have the Fence and Deck Mastery podcast. So if you ever want to learn from some of our clients that we interview, or vendors, manufacturers, all kinds of stuff, we interview tons of people on there, and there's a lot of good episodes, so you can check that out on any podcast platform. And something super exciting that just released this week, actually, just wrote a book called the Best Known Fence and Deck Contractor, and it's basically everything about marketing for fencing and decking contractors. So if you're ever if you're a reader, if you like reading on Kindle or you like a hard copy, we do have books available. You can see it through our Instagram page. There's a link in there to buy from there if you're interested. So pretty much all things digital marketing we handle for fencing and decking. What we do is websites, pay-per-click. We do, of course, local services ads. We do social media. We do Facebook ads. Most of them, I guess, the major types of digital marketing we handle for our clients, and of course, only for fencing and decking. But the kind of overview of our entire system is our omnipresence marketing system. I want to kind of go through this so you can kind of see how it works and everything that's involved and what you need to do. So the first thing is going to be maximizing your opportunities. That's what we're going to be talking about a lot today with LSAs. You got to get new opportunities coming in, people calling you, people reaching out with a need a fence or a deck or need help with something like that. And there's tons of ways to do it. We're just talking about LSAs today, but SEO, Google ads, Google pay-per-click ads, Facebook ads, there's all kinds of ways to do it. But today will just be the LSAs that we'll be focusing on. And number two is going to be your brand impressions. So, it's typically not really enough to have just one source of leads. You got to be out there in your community. People have got to be seeing you. So you want to have as many brand impressions as possible. So the rule of 7, I always refer to, people need to see your business 7 times before they do work with you. Nowadays people are bombarded with advertisements. So there's constantly new ads that are being thrown at us. So now it's probably even more than that. So you got to make sure you're taking care of that. And the third is going to be conversions. We've done separate webinars on this, just how you actually convert people when they get to you. We're going to talk about LSAs, like how you can increase your conversions as well. And we'll discuss that too. All right. So just curious with everyone that's on here, put a 1 in the chat if you're currently running Google local services ads, and then put a 2 in the chat if you're not. I want to see what everyone's currently doing. Mark's running them. Joshua, James, you guys aren't. Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks for commenting in there. So the big, I guess the best way to describe local services ads is, well, I kind of want to explain, what exactly they're not, like how you can compare them to other types of marketing. So if you've probably used or at least heard of Home Advisor, Angie's List, these other lead aggregators. So kind of how I like to think about it is local services ads were created because these companies, they spend millions and millions of dollars to rank on Google and then sell those leads to contractors like yourselves. And I think Google kind of realized it's a good business model and they own Google, so they can kind of do what they want. And they said, we can do it better than you can. So I think they created local services ads to be like, hey, well, we'll do kind of the same thing. We'll do it better and we'll throw it at the top of Google so we can start capturing those leads. And good for us, bad for you, or bad for them. So that's what I think they did. And they used to have only pay-per-click ads, which you guys may have heard of before. That's just going to be the whole pay-per-click system is when someone clicks on an ad, you get charged for it, regardless if you actually get a lead for it. So the big thing with local services ads, it's based off of actually receiving a lead. So you don't get charged unless that lead actually comes to you and somebody makes a connection. So it's a really, really important difference, because you are essentially guaranteeing that a lead's coming in for that amount of money that you spend. Whereas search ads, it's much more complicated. You don't really have that control over it, and it can go, it can be a lot tougher, a lot more expensive. But you are also, when you set them up, you are going to be getting Google guaranteed, which is good too, because it's basically showing people that you are an actual contractor. You have a license. You have you have insurance, so you're not just some random person. And then they're also, Google backs up this with like up to $2,000 or something if there's any problems, which probably wouldn't cover a new deck or fence, but that's kind of how they do it. And another thing is, they have a system to actually get refunds for the leads. So basically, if someone comes in there and is looking for work and contacts you, or maybe they're looking for a service that you said you don't provide, you will get your money back. So there's a lot less risk there. And I think just overall, it's just a really powerful thing. They're not perfect. Nothing really is in marketing, but in terms of lead generation, you can get a lot of solid leads, and it's, a lot less risk. I guess it's very low risk, high reward. All right. And then kind of why LSAs are so important always is going to revolve around why Google is so powerful. So 87% of people, when they're looking for some kind of service provider, are going to go to Google. So they pretty much just completely dominate the market. And it's just the number one place that people are looking. And I don't think that's ever going to go anywhere. They'll continue to dominate forever, probably. But with LSAs, they're at the very top. They're the first thing people see, and they're kind of, I guess, positioned in a way that it's pretty enticing to click. Before the pay-per-click ads were just kind of like a website link, and now they have like reviews attached to it. It looks really good, and it's a great way to, I guess, stand out and seem a little bit more trustworthy. But LSAs, or the ads in general, can get as much as 30% of the traffic. And they're going to be showing these leads. They only show the local services ads if it's a keyword that was typed in that's going to ideally lead to the type of job you want. So on the fencing side, you could say, I only want fence installations. And if somebody types in fence company near me, fence installation, or fence contractor, you're going to show up. So Google knows which keywords lead to results, and that's what they show the local services ads for. So they're very high intent keywords, very bottom of funnel keywords. So all this being said, you do have to have a plan. There's a way that you really need to manage the whole process, manage the leads. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about, everything that you need to do to make sure your account stays up high on the rankings, you continue to rank, and you continue to get leads. So I kind of already talked about this, but Google search results have evolved over the years. If you've seen Google for a while, it's been around a while. You can kind of see that's a big difference now between then. So once LSAs were introduced, it pushed everything down below them. So they took the top spot. That's why, it's worth doing a webinar on this and why I use them a lot for our clients, because they are at the very top spot. They're the first thing people see. So if you're not running local services ads, you're really just kind of losing out on leads, because we already know that a good percentage of the leads are going to go to local services ads. So if you're not running them, there's going to be a group of people that just click on those, reach out for a lead and go from there. And we get tons and tons of leads across all our clients. So we know they do generate really, really solid leads. And kind of the way I look at it with LSAs and really any type of marketing on Google, you're kind of like buying real estate from it. So if somebody types in, fence contractor or deck builder into Google, you want to show up as many times as possible. You can show up in the LSAs at the top. There's the pay-per-click section. There's the map section. There's the website results section. Of course, depending on your company, your budget, things like that, it might be feasible or not. But local services ads is one of those that's just a very low risk opportunity anyways. Okay, so there's a couple of you guys that haven't run them before, so I'm going to kind of take you through the whole process. So when you start them up, you fill out an application to enter all your business information. The whole process is not too bad. It's pretty easy to do, I'd say. But they will do a background check. So if you have anything, serious on your record, it might not work out for you. But, if you don't have a license, that could be an issue too, depending on what exactly or what state you're in. You may or may not need insurance. It kind of depends on it, on the state, and Google is pretty good about, figuring out if you need that or not. But they do a background check via Evident. You just have to do that with the owner. You don't have to get a background check of everybody, which is kind of confusing. They kind of make it seem like everybody does need one, but you can get away with just doing the owner. And then the lead costs might be the best part about them. Quite honestly, they're very reasonable. And definitely cheaper than pay-per-click ads. So since you are paying per lead, you can see it from anywhere to $30 to $60. I don't know. I have one client that we're still trying to figure out why the leads are so cheap. They're like $16. That's definitely an outlier though. Everyone else has been more like $40, $50, I'd say, as an average. And they also have messaging leads where somebody can message you. Those are going to be a little cheaper, but it does seem to vary depending on location, how much competition there is. But at the end of the day, you're paying, $30 to $60 to get a live connection. This is somebody that's reaching out to you, messaging you, or they're actually calling you and you're talking to them. So I'm just curious, what do you guys think? Like, so far, what we've seen, $30, $60, and based on your past experience with leads, $30, $60 for a live connection. What do you think? Put a 1 in the chat if you think that's a great opportunity, and 2 if you're like, it's not that great. It's it doesn't stand out. All right, James. So to me, based off of what we see, pay-per-click ads, you're paying for a lead. Mark says 1. You're paying for leads that are going to be more expensive, and they aren't a live opportunity. With SEO, you can get them for a little bit cheaper, but it's just a completely different system and takes a little bit longer. So I would say right now, with all the different options out there, local services ads is definitely one of the better ones. And I will say a really big piece of this, if you are, actually, I'm curious about this. Let me know which side you're on. So if you're a fence contractor, put in fence in the chat, put in deck if you're a deck contractor. If you do both, just put in, fence and deck. I just want to see, because there is a big difference between the two for LSAs at this moment. So I would just put fence if you're in fence, or both. Okay. James is both. Josh is deck. Okay. Mark's fence. Okay. So with the decking side, as of this moment, the decking side is much weaker than the fencing side because basically they group all of the different types of leads together for decking. And I'll explain fencing, so it'll kind of show you how they do it there, and then I'll explain the difference. So fencing has a separate category for fence contractors. So when you go in, you set them up, you say, hey, I'm a fence contractor. And then they give you 5 different options for like what types of fence jobs you want. So it'll be, fence installation, I think it's fence repair, custom construction, fence design, and other. Google loves throwing in other, so they can, charge you for leads that are very, ambiguous. But anyways, that's a key piece because then you can say, hey, I only want fence installations. Like most of our clients only want installations. Most of our deck clients only want installations. So with the fence side, you could say, hey, I only want fence installations. And then if a lead comes in that was clearly a repair, something like that, you can get your money back because it doesn't apply and you said you didn't want that. On the decking side, they make it complicated. And I'm hoping they fix this as soon as possible because it'll be a big game changer. But on the decking side, they kind of loop it all together. They have 2 categories. Decking is under carpentry. So anything related to decking, any type of lead there, repairs or deck maintenance, deck staining, those would all be categorized under there. And then they also have under general contracting decks and patios. So they link the decks and the patios together too. So at that point, if you don't do patios, you definitely wouldn't want to check that. So on the decking side, if you do not want deck repairs, LSAs might not be the best option. And pay-per-click might be a better option because you can be a little more specific. If you're good with both of those, then it's a good idea. We have seen the volume be a little bit spotty on the decking side, unfortunately, too. Whereas the fencing, it's definitely stronger. So it kind of depends on your business, the kind of results you want. But if you're good with repair jobs, or if you just want the leads and you're okay with paying a little bit more and you just need a lot more leads, and it might be a good option too because the leads are still pretty cheap. But just something to weigh there. All right, so we already talked a lot about this with the categories. So there isn't a separate category. It's under carpentry and general contracting for decks. You do have to get a background check. Insurance requirements, you need to submit your certificate of insurance to them. And a big piece of this, especially lately, that's been driving us crazy, you have to make sure that the best way to do it is have the liability insurance match your business name. So if you have a DBA name and you're using your original business name on the insurance, Google will reject you. We've been experimenting some things of like combining the documents, like having basically your certificate of insurance with the DBA paperwork, and that can work. But the best way to do it is really to have the insurance on there. So once you have that, you submit that. The business license, again, sometimes you don't need like a fencing license to do business. It depends on the state. So depending on what the requirements are, you have to submit that. And then if you are doing fencing, make sure to specify the categories there. Typically, if you're doing installations, I'll do installation, repair, installation, fence design, custom construction, and I'll leave out repair and other. That's typically how I do it. All right, so I want to talk about budget because this is a real big piece and something that you wouldn't really know without like experiencing it, I guess. But once you're approved, you got to set your budget. Depending on what you want to do, if you want to spend 2,000 a month, you can say 500 per week. You could be conservative there, but I'm going to show you kind of how it ends up working out and a better way to do it. But that way can work, just kind of doing the math and do 500 per week. If you don't have a lot of competitors, it might work. But basically, if you do it that way, you spend 500 per week in leads. Once that's done, it stops spending. The number of leads you get per day, it's going to be, there's no, I guess, way of judging it. Google kind of spreads it out over the week. They don't put them all in at once. And then let's see here. Oh, so the big piece that they changed out is going to be I guess this was probably in like the last couple months, when AI went crazy. They basically have an AI driven rating process. So um, now you're not able to manually dispute the leads like you used to be. Before, you could say, all right, this is a repair lead, dispute it. Now you basically have to say, they have a whole system that I'll show you here in a second, but you're basically rating the leads, saying how satisfied you were with them. And I'll show you the different options here in a second. But these are going to be the leads that shouldn't be charged. Again, it's not always perfect. Um, sometimes leads just slip in. It's really annoying, and you have to find a way to dispute them. But spam, somebody calling trying to sell you something, solicitation leads, if it's in the wrong area, that's also going to trigger it too. The wrong service area, if it's the wrong service, if you're getting a fence repair lead and you only want fence installations, those can be disputed, and they will be automatically disputed by Google. Someone looking for jobs, if there's a repeat duplicate lead, those will also flag it. Wrong number, voicemail leads, those will also not be charged. Okay, so kind of what we've seen from clients and kind of our analysis with when we use them for clients. The best part probably about LSAs is it is cheaper than your Google pay-per-click search ads. It's a lot cheaper than those, and it's really cost effective. And it's also cheaper than Home Advisor, and the lead quality seems to be better than Home Advisor or Angie, those companies. So in general, it's just quite a bit better. I'm definitely curious too. So is anybody, I guess, put a 1 in the chat if you're using Angie's List, Home Advisor, Yelp, like any of those services. I'm just curious who's using those right now. Okay, so looks like most people aren't using them. So basically, I don't know. I guess what I hear from about Angie's List, Home Advisor, that kind of thing, the leads just seem to be lower quality, and they're, especially nowadays, they're really not great. So the local services ads, they can be hit or miss, though, I will say. But overall, they seem to be a lot better than those. And I'll show you some different factors of why they work better in certain areas versus others. But when you compare some of the companies like Angie or another common one we hear is networks. A big problem with using services like that is you're kind of setting yourself up like a commodity. You're kind of seen as just another deck builder, another fence contractor. So with these, with the LSAs, you can kind of separate yourself with reviews and make yourself stand out, that kind of thing. Of course, you're always going to get price shoppers, unfortunately. And this year, it seems like there's more than ever. There's more price shoppers than ever. But that's just going to be kind of the way it is. But overall, the ROI does seem to be there if the leads are good, and you're getting enough of them. All right, so this is why I think it's a no-brainer for at least for you to try them. It depends on the area you're in, that kind of thing, but it should be tried. As long as on the fencing side, it's really a no-brainer. The decking side, it's a little bit more spotty if you only want installations, but if you're doing repair jobs, and it does make sense. But they're going to show the top results. It's a huge opportunity since most people go to Google, and you're only paying per lead, so it's not a whole lot of risk. And then lower costs, the higher quality leads, and you can also modify your budget. So depending on your business, you can lower the budget, increase the budget as needed. If you can handle more work, you can turn it up. If you can, you could always turn it down, increase or decrease the budget. All right, so I'm going to talk about how to actually get this set up too. So we'll go through some of the steps here. Of course, if you guys need help with that, we can assist you in setting this up and using best practices for setting up local services ads, because there are some tricks to them, to make sure it's done right, and then also ongoing management, which we'll touch on here too. But best way to do it, just go to Google, type in Google local services ads. This link should bring you there too, but easier way is just to Google it. Just go to Google local services ads. You have to see if you're eligible. I've never been declined. You have to see like if your state offers it or your county or city. I've heard of people being rejected. I've never really seen it myself, so you should be fine. That should be offered in your area, but definitely check there. That's the first thing they'll do. And The ranking is kind of the tough part because, when I first started working with these, I didn't think it would be so involved with how to rank your local services ads. I didn't realize it was so high maintenance. I should have known because it's Google, but um, I just want to make sure, I guess you kind of, reiterate that before we get into the rankings, that with local services ads, they're a good option. They're not perfect. They have their advantages and disadvantages. Same with pay per click, Google Maps, same with SEO too. They all have advantages and disadvantages. LSAs do work better for some than others. So depending on where you're at, they can work better. Typically in more highly populated areas, they will work better. But this is definitely not a complete solution. It's something you want to try, you want to use, but depending on your company size, it's likely not going to be a solution to all your leads needs. Likely you need to do other types of marketing with it. But if you are, in terms of the ranking factors, if you are in a high population area, those do tend to work out better. If we've run them in bigger cities, like Houston or Dallas, and they get a lot more volume there. So the more people that are around you, the better they're going to work. If you're around, in very small areas, they could barely work. They might just not work at all, especially if you're very specific about or if you're very picky, I guess, about the type of leads. Like if you ran them in a small area for only, if you ran them in an area that's only, small population, you only ran it for decks, there's a good chance it's not going to do as good as, a much bigger area. And then the proximity factor. So you do need to be, or you get the best results when you're close to somebody that's searching. So if you're in the same city that the person's searching, you're going to be more likely to show up. Google recognizes how close you are, just like they do with your Google business profile. So that's a big piece. The reviews and responsiveness, that's really critical. Reviews are what I'm always talking about. You have to get a lot of reviews, but they play a part into the local services ads too. And a big piece of that is you have to get verified reviews. You have to get, best case scenarios, you get verified reviews through local services ads. I'll touch on that here in a second. Responsiveness, they will track how quick you respond. If you don't respond at all or you miss calls, it's a huge problem. We actually had a client that had somebody that answered the phones. They were picking up the calls, and then I told them, all right, we're about to turn these on. You can't miss any calls. You have to pick up every single call. And first lead came in, she was in the bathroom. Lead came in and basically just put him in a jail that we couldn't get him out of. They just weren't ranking for anything after they did that. I don't know why Google does it like that. It drives me crazy, but we weren't able to get him out, and we had to stop doing those type of ads. So make sure you are picking up every call. Ideally have some kind of someone you trust answering, or an answering service, that can make sure every call is answered and, at any time. And let's see, the business hours. So this kind of plays back to the answering service. If you ever talk to me, I'm always talking about answering services, because if you can have one and show yourself you're open, 24/7, then no matter when a lead comes in, whenever somebody has an issue, they can reach out and you can pick it up. So that's a really important piece. And the more or the longer you're open, the more you're going to show, the better off you're going to be with leads. People can submit complaints if they have a problem with what you're doing. If somebody does complain about your business, that's obviously not going to help. So definitely avoid that. And then here's going to be some additional strategies. I'm going to get into more details of how to win with them, like best case practices. Because believe it or not, there are quite a few things that go into the management process. But give me one sec. Sorry, I'm just moving around my window here. So got to set it up, your profile right. There's a lot of things that go into that. I'm going to talk about all the best practices for all that too. So we were talking about the budget. I said I'd come back to it, and that's what I'm going to do now. So you have the budget, but it's very common for people to say like, all right, I want to test this out. I want to do like 1,000 a month, and you divide that by 4, you put in 250. The problem with that is if there's any, smarter or, more knowledgeable LSA people or competitors out there, they can use a huge budget and know they're going to trump you. And they're also going to know they're not even going to spend that whole budget. So just to give you an idea, a lot of our clients will say, maybe 2,000 a month is what they want to spend. When they do that, we usually open it up to like 1,500 a week, even 2,000 a week, because you got to have a big enough budget to compete with these people that are already out there. You already started. You want to have enough budget that Google's like, all right, these guys are serious. Let's send them more leads, that kind of thing. And then the ad schedule, we already talked about that. Answering service, make sure you're open on nights and weekends if you can. If you have an answering service, they'll be available 24/7. It's a huge, huge hack for your business. The job types, make sure you're selecting the right things, fence installations, or depending on what you want. Service areas. This is probably the most frustrating part of them at all. This is really critical to get this right. But you'll notice when you go to add service areas, it's super tough to just add cities. Because basically, when you add a city, if you add a whole bunch of cities, it just marks these tiny little things on the map and it leaves these giant gaps on the map. And you're like, it gets very confusing. So if you want to add your service areas, what we typically do is one of two things. The number one option is to add counties, and then you can exclude cities you don't want. But the real key is to use zip codes instead of cities, because for whatever reason they make this so complicated, and you kind of have to figure out what zip codes are where and just exclude them one at a time. If you're good with going in a whole county, then it's really easy to do this. If you're going to be very picky about like where you want to go, then you have to add zip codes and tell Google where you don't want to go and put those on the map. Photos, make sure you have multiple photos for every service. So if you're doing, I'm going to keep saying, fence repair, fence installations, if you're doing staining jobs or you're doing resurfacing, whatever, make sure you have at least, 3 to 5 photos of every service that you do on there. All right. So probably the most tedious part of this, and the number one thing I'd say is forgotten and not done by pretty much everybody, is managing the leads properly. So when you get a lead that comes in, you need to manage it within Google's dashboard. So you need to mark them as, if they were actually booked or if it was a bad lead or what it was. So when you're in the dashboard, you can listen to calls. They have recordings. You can see the messages they send. So you should have a pretty good idea of what happened with that lead and then categorize it from there. And basically, if you have a lead that comes in, it was a good lead, you send somebody out for an appointment, you mark that as booked, and that's another option in the dashboard. But I would say at the very least every week, ideally every day or every couple of days, you come in here and start categorizing this. We have somebody on our team that's main role is to just, for the most part, is categorizing leads and checking on them. So we'll mark these depending on what the outcome was. And all of these things are what Google's looking for. If you just kind of sit there and you don't do anything, you just leave them all in this active list here, Google is eventually going to have problems with it. And I know this firsthand because when we first started doing this and didn't know how picky Google was, because they're not great at explaining it, we started to see a client of ours, their results started to rank for less and less stuff because of it. So it's really important to do that. So, we already talked about this. Mark them as booked or archived, and then add the customer details. And then if something was a bad lead or something that was unconverted, one that wasn't processed, you can archive it too. So you never want to leave them as open. Every single lead you want to deal with and categorize. Okay, so for better or worse, probably worse in my opinion, but before, several months ago, you were able to dispute a lead. So a lead came in and it was a repair when you only wanted installations. We would go in there and dispute the lead. Now they have a rating system, so you can rate the lead. So you can say, show you the options. You can show you if you were very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, or very dissatisfied. So this process is kind of how you qualify the leads now. You have to say how you feel about them, I guess. And that's how you can kind of tell Google what you want more of, how to update the leads and give you more of what you want. All right. And then these, I guess Google's whole system is they manage it for the most part on their end. Their AI is listening to calls, listening to messages, and trying to figure out if it matched up with what services you wanted in the area you're in. But most of the time, you should be not getting charged for leads outside of your area, your service area that you tell them. If it's not a service you provide, and then yeah, that's the main two. Okay, so the reviews are crucial. If you're not paying attention to Google reviews on your listing or in LSAs, you got to. It's absolutely crucial. But they have a separate type of review for LSAs. So basically, they want to. I guess this is kind of like Amazon's. You've probably seen it where they say like the verified purchase. So when someone leaves a review underneath it, it says like, okay, this was a person that actually bought the product and not a fake review. That's kind of what they're doing here. So if you mark a job as booked or as completed, you'll then have the option to request a review. And when you do that, if they leave a review, it'll come back and it'll show as a verified review. So it'll be a different look to it. And I'll have a picture of that here in a second. But this is kind of what it looks like, Google verified job. And oops, a sec. Just in general, the reviews are going to hold you back regardless. So like if you have, you start using LSAs and you have 10 reviews and you have competitors with 80 or 100, you're going to look much worse than them overall. So regardless of how well you do, manage your leads, things like that, if somebody sees you next to somebody with a lot more reviews, they're likely going to get that first click and, that first chance of the lead. But there's a lot of things you can do outside of that to kind of boost your rankings that we've been talking about. A lot of it comes down to just the basics, picking up the calls when they come in, making sure somebody answers quickly, and also, managing all the leads internally, like we were talking about, marking them as booked and things like that. So yeah, that's what it'll show up as. All right. If you want to increase the budget, I see this all the time. When we start working with somebody that are already doing the leads, unfortunately, a lot of the times you can kind of put yourself in a hole that's hard to get out of. That's why it's so important to do these right from the beginning. But one way we can try to do it and kind of hope that everyone else is also doing a bad job in your area is opening up the budget. So like I said, I would say probably our client that gets the most leads is probably going to be in like Houston. And I don't think they spend more than like $3,000 a month. I don't think their budget, they're a fence company, and I don't think they spend any more than that. So there's really no harm in opening it up quite a bit. If you have it as a $1,500 a week or $2,000 a week, it doesn't really matter because you're likely not going to spend that anyways. So if you can handle the leads, you can afford the leads ideally, it's best to just open it up and, start to get more that way. The service areas, this is a very common one. It drives me probably more crazy than anything is, if clients tell us they only want to go certain areas, sometimes it's just not enough. It's not a big enough area. So if you're trying to go like 20 miles and that's it, it's likely not going to be getting the greatest results. So, try to expand, go into more counties, whatever you're willing to go to, that's going to help you out more. All right. And then, yeah, we already talked about the leads. Make sure to close those out. And the reviews, once you're done, make sure you're asking for those too. Okay. If you're not doing it, I know some guys said that some people joined since we started. So if anybody is not doing local services ads, if you want to check them out, it's like I said, it's not a terrible process. It's fairly easy to get started. So you just Google local services ads. That's the link there. Make sure you do the background check. Make sure you have some tracking in place. Ideally you can tell where those leads resulted or what they resulted in. So if you have, you know, 20 leads or whatever that comes each month, you want to keep track of those, see what you made off of them, see how the leads are working, to see if they're actually leading to sales. And then also make sure you're leveraging, the platform, entering all the data into the back end. And it's kind of just playing the game. I think with all kinds of marketing, that's kind of a good way to say it, because it is kind of a game. You're just testing a bunch of things to see what works. And as long as it's making you money, it makes sense to do. And as of right now, I would say it's very favorable. The leads are very cheap. It's kind of surprising they're still this cheap. So I think over time that's going to increase, and that's what you got to make sure you I guess play the game while it's still making sense, while it's cheap enough, because eventually it's probably going to get expensive, like the pay-per-click ads. All right, so we're wrapping up here. We talked about what they are, where they're active, which like I said, it's probably pretty much everywhere. I don't think. Let me know if you do get rejected. I'd be interested to see that. We talked about how it works, how you can get started, how you can get in the top two. It used to be three. It's not three anymore. It's two. And then, just how you can take advantage of this. It's at the very least, I would say, try it out, see how it's working. Just don't think you can go into this and just kind of let it run and do nothing, because you're just going to burn your account. It's going to affect things. So make sure that you're doing it correctly. Have someone that manages these leads, and that's going to help your results a lot more. All right. So curious, I know we have some different people, different industries between fence and deck, but I'm curious what you guys, is anything that stood out, anything that maybe you didn't know before, exciting, any kind of takeaway, I'd love to know. Maggie did not know we need to go into the Google dashboard and maintain that. Yeah, it's something you got to go in there to close out the leads. So it's definitely something you got to take care of. And it's a lot of, I guess, tedious work. That's why we have somebody that does that. But, if you're running them by yourself, definitely make sure you have somebody that's consistently going in there, every couple of days or something like that. If there's not anything else, I think if you do have any questions about your marketing, if this was just the ads, where we do websites, SEO, pay-per-click ads, Facebook ads, social media, we do a lot of marketing and a lot of ways to generate leads. So if you have any questions about your website or your marketing, feel free to reach out. We can do an audit and kind of show you what we find. And have any questions, we're happy to answer them too. So you reach out to our website. There's my email. There's our phone number. Can reach out that way. And then, if anything else, any questions, feel free to put them in there, and I'll give it another minute. But I think that's it for today. Thanks for everyone coming on here. We'll send out the recording and put it on YouTube if you do want to come back to it or share it with somebody, that kind of thing. But yep, that's it. Appreciate everybody coming on. And if you are a deck builder, hopefully we'll see you at Deck Expo. We'll be there, 2 weeks from now. So we'll have a booth and you can come check us out, and we're happy to chat with you there and learn a little bit about you and the business, and have some fun. So thanks, everybody. Take care, and have a great rest of the week, and happy Halloween.